Hey guys, it's time to Nefis and chill, and as always, if you'd like to see more ESO content from me or just want to support me, please do subscribe to the channel and help me out. It's always appreciated. Now in this video, we're going to have a discussion about Engulfing Flames. For those of you who are coming back to the game after Dragonhold DLC launch, or for those of you who may not have noticed this change in the patch notes, Engulfing Flames was essentially removed from the Dragonknight tank toolkit for, at least in my opinion, good and healthy reasons. This change to Engulfing Flames allows raid groups in PvE in particular to actually consider picking up Magicka Dragoknights for their raids if they want the full 10% fire damage debuff on a boss or targets. For those of you who do Dragonknight tank, you'll notice that your Engulfing Flames debuff value, it'll say current value. Most of you are probably sitting at around, at the very minimum, 1%. I think most tanks are right now, without really trying for it, are sitting around 3 to 5%. So it's a pretty interesting change. Now, for those of you who have kept up with me on the Dragonhold PTS, I made a video on this showing that you can sacrifice some stats at not so much of a terrible cost to attain the original 10% debuff value of Engulfing Flames as a tank. So, someone at ZeniMax must have noticed the video, and in the last cycle of the PTS, they actually made it so that Engulfing Flames scales off both of your Max Magicka stat and your spell damage stat, not just your spell damage. It's not explicitly said in the tooltip, in the Engulfing Flames tooltip, but that's how this works. It says it scales off of or based on your offensive stats. It's not very specific, but it's both spell damage and Max Magicka. So even if you were to get to 3,300 spell damage, or even 2,600 to 3,000 spell damage, you'll sit at around 8% of the debuff value for Engulfing Flames. It took me a while to get past this 8% barrier, as I like to call it, because it seemed that even the more minute adjustments made didn't budge the value past 8%, which means I had to sacrifice a lot more than previously on the PTS to get to 9 or 10%. So after playing around and transmuting quite a lot of stuff, this setup I'm going to show you guys is going to be pretty close to what you may run in trials. We got Stonekeeper, we have Yonakrin, we have Alkosh. Pretty basic setup for most main tanks in the trials. And the results are a little bit discouraging, to say the least, for probably most of you, but also hopeful on one hand. Now, if you want to run a similar setup to this, because there's different ways of getting to these kind of stats, to get that full 10% value of Engulfing Flames, you're sacrificing the typical Force 30, you're restricting yourself to infused traits on your jewelry, to get the most out of the spell damage enchantments, and there are also a few factors you may need to consider. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys what I did, or rather what I tested, and hopefully maybe you guys can arrive at your own conclusion as to whether it's worth it or not. Personally, if you don't want to watch the rest of the video, which I actually do recommend, I think it's worth sacrificing a lot for this if you really don't want to run a Magicka DK DPS in your raid composition. If you want all Magplars or whatever for the most damage, whatever it may be, whatever the flavor of the month will be, and you don't want to run Magicka DK for your score pushing or just to get the most damage for your group, I think it's worth it in certain trials. I would not say I personally am not confident in bringing a similar sub to this, to the more harder ones like Sunspire or even Cloudrest. I would say I'll give a list like Hellraw Citadel, probably Sanctum Ophidia, Ethereal Archive, and Asylum Sanctorium Hardmode. I would be comfortable or okay with bringing such a stripped down setup. But anyway, I'm going to show you guys a current setup and explain why I did what I did. So it seems to me, after playing around with this Engulfing Flames, it still seems to prefer scaling more off of your spell damage more than your Max Magicka, but your Max Magicka is still of great concern, because I was sitting at around, on the character sheet, quite a bit lower than 26,000 Max Magicka. I was at around 17, 18, 19,000 Max Magicka, and at a certain point, at around 6 or 7% of Engulfing Flames, the current value of it wasn't budging, even if I had 3,100 spell damage. So I had to raise up the Max Magicka up by about 20 points in attribute points. and the rest just went into health. Obviously, we do need to take into account this if we're actually going to be serious about this, that we're going to be getting hit hard by a few trial bosses like the Warrior on hard mode, or even Olms, which I'm not sure exactly how this is going to work out. With minor toughness and so on, you might have to actually dodge your Olms, but if you really want the Engulfing Flames on the tank, it's gonna be the sacrifice you make. But you get the point. We do need a reasonable amount of health points. So this is what we have: 44 points into health, 20 into Max Magicka. And for the food, we do have Bewitched Sugar Skulls. Now, you're gonna probably say, well, Nephis, why aren't you running bi-stat food for Magicka and health? Again, I really want to keep this as realistic as possible as to what I really would want to run in a trial. I don't want to run around in a trial of any trial with just 10,000, 13,000 stamina. And honestly, the difference between Bewitched Sugar Skulls and bi-stat Magicka and health food, it wasn't that great. It didn't make a single difference. So that goes to show you that it's doesn't really matter. So tri-stat food still, for tanking, really great. And for the Mundus Stone, I did experiment between the Apprentice Stone and the Mage Stone. The Apprentice Stone won out. It's like a full 1% value difference in Engulfing Flames if I switch to Mage Stone. So if I switch to Mage Stone right now, I would only have a 7% current value of Engulfing Flames rather than 8%. So again, I said earlier, it's going to scale preferably more off of spell damage, but it still scales off both of those stats. For the gear, we're going to have the Stonekeeper, and actually I was toying around with other sets like Damihas. Now Damihas also does give you max stamina and max magic, which is pretty great as a tank, and with the 2-piece procs, and since you'll typically have a higher magic pool on your Dragonknight tank than your Stam, the Damihas portion of granting you 200 spell damage is going to proc always. You're not going to get the 200 weapon damage proc, so this will give you a pretty significant boost towards getting it. But the reason why we have Stonekeeper here, again, a lot of tanks like Stonekeeper, especially Dragonknight and Nightblade tanks. It's a really good set, and realistically speaking, it's probably what a lot of tanks like to wear for progression groups. So you can still stick with Stonekeeper. The Damihas, I'll explain in a bit. Yonokrin, again, pretty typical setup. Now you'll notice here something strange. You'll notice here that I have 3 infused pieces, and we have 4 divines. So as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, we are sacrificing the typical 4 sturdy pieces. So if you're not comfortable in the trial and you're blocking a bit too much or permanently, a lot of beginner tanks like to permablock a lot, I would not recommend this setup. I would still stick with the 4 sturdy, but without the 4 sturdy, this is gonna boost us quite a bit, the 4 divines, because again we are doing the Apprentice Stone. For the jewelry, we still have Alkosh. For the weapons, we still have Alkosh, but the jewelry traits have to be infused. I did try your Arcane, but again, just like the Mage versus the Apprentice, the Arcane jewelry did not win out over the infused spell damage enchanted jewelry. So this is what we are going to have to end up with. And for the sword and board, we do have Divine's Piece again on the shield. We have a Max Magicka enchantment. And on the sword, we have an infused trait. And we do have a weapon damage enchantment. And this is also going to help us again later on, especially with the Stonekeeper setup, to get to our full 10% value of Engulfing Flames. And of course, the lightning staff on the back bars, Crusher infused, a typical tank setup. So yeah, I pretty much tested a couple different setups, and this setup plus the Damihas setup is going to be it. Now the reason why I did not include Damihas right now to show you guys the full 10% value is because in a raid, if you are going to be with a Magicka DPS composition, there's probably going to be a Magicka sorcerer, whether it's a healer or a DPS. They're going to give you Miner's Prophecy, I believe, or was it Templars that gave you Minor Sorcery? Yeah, Minor Sorcery. Templars, Max Sorcery, whatever. In a raid, you typically get more buffs than you would alone. And I do want to take out Olarime as a consideration that a raid dummy. Here you can see I get 9%. Now, once we do the proc on the weapon enchantment, and we also get a, major brutality and sorcery, whatever, you'll notice that. You'll notice that you get a 10% value of Engulfing Flames, and obviously Engulfing Flames lasts 14 seconds, which means you have plenty of chances to proc the weapon damage enchantment in the front bar. But in a raid, you won't probably get things like Major Courage, especially in places like the Hellrot Citadel, or Sodom's Sanctorium Hardman, where usually the Olorime circle is not placed on the tank, it's placed on the group. So you'll probably not get Major Courage. You'll probably have an Aggressive Horn, and this does boost our Max Magicka and Max Stamina quite a bit. And while that is there as well, again, I did mention we do have the Major Sorcerer from ourselves, and we do have Minor Sorcerer, which is a 10% additional boost. So this is why you can probably get away with Stonekeeper in an actual raid. You don't have to keep up Dummy House. Now the Dummy House is more there, I think, as a actual guarantee of making sure you do get the thing. Okay, so we're away from the raid dummy, and we don't have any raid buffs at all. We're gonna make sure we get this Major Sorcery going. And this time we do have Dummy House slotted instead of Stonekeeper. So again, this is more of a guaranteed way to get 10% value. As you can see, we are getting the full 10% value. So this is just one way you can get the full 10% value. If you're not sure if you're gonna get the Minor Sorcery and other raid buffs like Olorime and so forth, which I don't think you need Olorime or Major Courage to get to the full 10% value with Stonekeeper, in my opinion. Pretty sure you don't need it. But it's probably really great guaranteed boost as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. This is pretty much 2 ways you can get to the full 10% value of Engulfing Flames. There's definitely probably a few other ways I can think off the top of my head right now. But as you can see, it's quite a great deal of sacrifice in terms of your personal stats to run Engulfing Flames. So like I said earlier, I think it would only have to be run in content you're comfortable with. I guess you could probably apply this sort of build to even Cloudrest Hard Moon, but not as a tanking Zamaja. I think the tank handling the minis, because of 30 or so, 32k health or so with minor toughness and so forth. Possibly with Eben, 34,000 or 33,000 minimum. It's going to be fine in Cloudrest as an off tank. Cloudrest Hard Moon as an off tank. But for other places like the Cragworm Trials and maybe a Sodom's Sanctorium Hard Moon, you can probably get away with this kind of setup. But for other places, probably not. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Would you do this? Would you not really want to run a Mag DK DPS in a raid composition and prefer to put it on the tank, if possible? Or would you just say, screw it, I'm going to bring in Mag DK to raid anyway? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video. And again, please do subscribe to the channel to support me. It's really appreciated. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for Nefis and chilling. Stay safe and have fun.